This is VOA Africa. Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory in for Hashtag The You What. It's Wednesday, August the 28th. This is Africa 54. Nigeria's plan for cattle herders triggers some negative reactions. The first black cemetery in the United States uncovers the history of enslaved Africans. And how mobile money technology is creating a financially inclusive society in Uganda. For years, Nigeria has been seeking a lasting solution to the conflict between farmers and herders over grazing lands. The conflict has claimed thousands of lives. The country's Middle Belt region is most affected by the dispute, but recently the government introduced a settlement plan for herders aimed at ending the clashes. But the settlements known as Ruga in Hausa are meeting some resistance. Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja.
Haruna Isa, who struggles to keep his father's herd well fed, gets up early to find a few good grazing spots around the city center of Nigeria's capital. When he ventures out, he often has to share the spots with other herders and can get in trouble when his cows stray into farmland.
Sometimes we have a problem with the farmers when the cows enter their farm and destroy the crops. The farmers seize our tools and sometimes our herds until we pay some ransom to get them back.
The conflict between cattle herders and farmers in Nigeria dates back decades. Population growth, urbanization and desertification triggered by increasing climate change have escalated the conflict. More than 3,600 people have been killed in clashes over grazing land between 2015 and 2018. Thousands more have been displaced. The government says establishing cattle settlements or rugas for the herders will address the issue.
What it is intended to do is purely to find a way of mitigating the movement of pastoralists.
But the government plan has met with stiff resistance, especially from the eastern part of Nigeria, where residents say they will not give up their lands for these settlements.
It's not a scheme that can assist the country, because already we have rugas that are existing, and those rugas have been abandoned. What happened to the foreign, to the initial rugas that we have? These are the questions Nigeria should keep asking.
The pilot phase of government's cattle settlement plan provides for 6 settlements per state. These settlements will be equipped with schools and hospitals for herders and their families. Nigeria's Farmers Association hopes this plan will put an end to the crisis.
We need peace. We, the farmers, if there is no peace, we cannot farm. If we don't farm, we cannot produce food for the Nigerians to eat.
For now, Nigerian authorities have suspended the plan temporarily to continue discussions with stakeholders. Until then, herders like Haruna will have to make do feeding their cattle, even if they create a public nuisance. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja.
A team of veterinarians in Kenya's Olpejeta Conservancy is trying to save the northern white rhino from extinction by using in vitro fertilization. The last 2 northern white rhinos on Earth are females living at the conservancy. Vets have succeeded in extracting ova from both females and hope to fertilize them using northern white rhino sperm to produce viable embryos. Here's Ruud Elmendorp with more.
Late 2018, the fate of the northern white rhino seemed to be sealed when the last male of the species, called Sudan, died. His tomb in Olpejeta Conservancy in Kenya represents the obituary of a race that numbered 3,000 in 1900. Now, with only 2 females left, the Olpejeta Conservancy has announced veterinarians have extracted ova from the females to be inseminated with northern white rhino sperm collected earlier. Olpejeta partnered with the Dvůr Králové Zoo in the Czech Republic, where the rhinos were born. The 10 collected ova were airlifted to the conservancy where they will be fertilized. They hope to produce a pregnancy soon, but getting a calf will take time, says Jan Stechkal from the Dvor Kralove Zoo.
We have to take into account that gestation period of a rhino is about 16 months. So even if we would succeed in coming, let's say, 1 year, it would not be realistic to expect to have a northern white rhino baby born before, let's say, 3 years.
The cost of the exercise was not disclosed, but the price is expected to be high. Alpagetta CEO Richard Vine says it's worth it.
We have it within our power, not only for the rhinos, but for other species as well, to reverse this process, to live better with the planet, to live more in tune with our environment.
Still, there's no guarantee the IVF method will work. A 50% chance, says Stechkal.
We did really good progress, and I think that this progress can give us optimism that we will be successful even in next steps.
It seems there's every reason to take the risk, because when these 2 northern white rhinos pass away, they will be buried next to Sudan, taking the species with them to the grave, to be lost forever. Ruud Elmendorf for VOA News, Alpagetta, Kenya.
August 1619 marked the beginning of nearly 250 years of slavery in America, what many have called America's original sin. VOA's Chris Simpkins tells us how some African Americans are preserving the history of their ancestors as a way to better understand how they and their freed descendants contributed to building a new nation.
Tucked away in a Hampton, Virginia neighborhood is a historic cemetery. It could be the first African cemetery in what would become America, and if so, would hold special meaning. William Tucker, the first African baby baptized in English North America, may be buried here.
We did discover that we were from the Angola region, and a very strong percentage of that. So it validates what we have always thought.
DNA testing has confirmed these Tuckers are descendants from Angola, the birthplace of Anthony and Isabella. Their son, William, named after his plantation owner, was born in Virginia in 1624. His parents are 2 of the first documented Africans to arrive in the New World aboard the ship, the White Lion.
We found over 100 unmarked graves. Everywhere you see a white stone is where the ground-penetrating X-ray identified the grave site. So we don't know how old. What we do know is that this was long before a lot of the markers that we have out here today.
Few details are known about William Tucker's life.
There were so many captured and put on the slave ships. So many did not survive, but those that did survive, we are the healthy ones, our ancestors. It is the sacred ground for us. And so there's no way we can pass it or walk through it without thinking of an ancestor to whom we owe gratitude and to whom we are endeared.
In Newport, Rhode Island, historian Keith Stokes is leading efforts to preserve this colonial African burial ground called God's Little Acre.
So as early as 1650, Newport had a burial place where anyone, regardless of race or class or ethnicity, could be buried. By 1705, the northwest section of this burying ground, we're starting to see enslaved Africans buried there. And over the next 100 years, hundreds and hundreds of markers and hundreds of burials are being made at that burying ground. We believe there were at least 3,000 burials during the life cycle of that burying ground.
Stokes and his family are descendants of some of the first Africans brought to the New World aboard the Seaflower, the first documented slave ship to arrive in Rhode Island in 1696.
My own family is buried here, but more importantly, it's a sense of African identity. I mean, this is a place where men and women of African descent actually lived in this community and were buried here, and it gives me a direct connectivity to the history of my own community.
Today, less than 300 grave markers of early Africans and later African Americans have survived in this cemetery. Stokes is trying to preserve those remaining while chronicling fascinating life stories of people like Duchess Camino.
She's enslaved in the household of William Ellery Channing. William Ellery Channing grows up to become one of the early founders of the Unitarian Church in America. William Ellery Channing talks about the fact that his abolition of slavery comes from growing up and being cared for by this Duchess Camino. He actually etches on her marker her epitaph, which says she's one of the most pious, industrious black women. But most importantly, Duchess Camino wins her freedom by selling pastry cakes in Newport. She later becomes the pastry queen of Rhode Island and becomes quite wealthy. And she purchases the freedom of herself and her remaining children.
Stokes is not the only one trying to save hallowed ground. In Hampton, the Tuckers received a state grant to maintain this 2-acre site immersed in 400 years of history.
We exist because they worked hard, they struggled. They did whatever they had to do to survive.
I'm proud that we as a society and family have joined together to take care of it. It's been a lot of work. It's not just us being proud, but we want to share this with everyone so that everyone knows a part of their history.
The historical value of this cemetery is now becoming well known in the community. And for the Tuckers, it's a place where people can learn about how their ancestors and descendants not only survived, but endured. Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Hampton, Virginia.
Well, the leaders of France and Brazil exchanged heated words over fires burning in the Amazon. Meanwhile, experts warn that the season for fires in the world's largest rainforest has not yet peaked. Viewer Steve Baragona has the details.
Fires burning across the Amazon release colossal amounts of carbon dioxide at a time when experts say the world needs those trees to absorb the planet-warming gas. NASA Earth scientist Doug Morton says the fires may get worse.
The region is only midway through the dry season. And so fires that are started today that do get out of control can burn for many weeks yet.
Morton says unlike wildfires burning in neighboring Bolivia, Brazil's fires bear the hallmarks of clearing for large-scale agriculture.
To get a towering smoke cloud that rises up into the upper atmosphere, you need to have a very intense hot fire, the kind of fire that happens when you light thousands of acres on fire at a time that have been cleared and dried in the hot sun.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro campaigned on opening up the rainforest to development. Nearly 160,000 fires have burned across the Brazilian Amazon this year. That's below records set in the mid-2000s when deforestation rates peaked. But it's 60% higher than last year, raising concerns that it signals a return to widespread deforestation. The G7 leading industrialized nations pledged tens of millions of dollars to fight the fires. Bolsonaro questioned their motives.
Será que alguém ajuda alguém? A não ser uma pessoa pobre, né?
Does anyone help anyone if it is not a poor person without something in return? Why do they have an eye on the Amazon? What have they wanted there for so long?
Bolsonaro and French President Emmanuel Macron have traded harsh words over the situation. Macron accused Bolsonaro of lying about environmental commitments. Bolsonaro says France wants to treat Brazil like a colony. Bolsonaro's comment on a Facebook meme insulting Macron's wife has intensified the spat.
It's sad. It's sad. It's sad, first of all, for him and for Brazilians. I think that Brazilian women are without a doubt ashamed to read this from their president. I think that Brazilians, who are a great people, are a bit embarrassed of his behavior and expect for him as president to conduct himself properly with others.
With fires continuing to burn, Bolsonaro says he will consider the G7's firefighting aid if Macron retracts what he calls insults. Steve Baragona, VOA News.
And we'll be right back.
I am Sheikh Asali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. 72-year-old Pa Joe makes coffins for a living, but his caskets are far from ordinary. For the last 15 years, he has specialized in the craft of fantasy coffins. It's a unique type of casket considered by Ghanaians as the best way to reflect the life of the deceased. Some may call him a carpenter, but he's always considered himself an artist who sculpts with wood. Pa Joe began making coffins in 1962. Today, he's regarded as one of Ghana's most famous and prolific coffin makers. Over the years, his caskets have been exhibited in galleries worldwide and even bought by former President Jimmy Carter. Next up, an umbrella, a bauhinia flower, a bleeding eye. These icons have taken on new significance in the Hong Kong protests, and now a number of demonstrators are getting them inked onto their bodies. 22-year-old tattoo artist Zada Lam says he has given over 200 people the protest-themed tattoo since the protest started in June, and all for free. And finally, visitors to this year's Comic-Con in Nairobi were treated to a colorful cosplay contest, where fans of comics and superhero movies were judged on the craftsmanship of their outfits. This year's winner was Thunderball. Popular globally, cosplay enthusiasts worldwide spent around $17.8 billion on costumes in 2017. Nairobi's Comic-Con is the largest event of its kind in East Africa. And that's what's trending today.
But our leaders from African countries and international organizations gathered in Japan on Wednesday for the latest Tokyo International Conference on African Development. It was the 7th installment of ITICAD and the first meeting since 2016 when it was held in Nairobi, Kenya. The meetings are led by Japan and co-organized by the United Nations, the United Nations Development Program, the World Bank, and the African Union Commission. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe spoke at the conference and stressed the importance of addressing climate issues and the need for technological innovation. U.S. President Donald Trump's path to re-election next year appears to be getting more complicated. Trump continues to boast about a strong economy, despite warnings from a number of economists that the U.S. may be headed for a recession in 2020. And now the president must fend off a primary challenge from within his own party. VOA national correspondent Jim Malone has more.
At the G7 summit in France, President Donald Trump charted a solitary path on trade, Russia, and combating climate change. Trump also defended what some see as his chaotic approach to dealing with China on trade.
The way I negotiate, it's done very well for me over the years, and it's doing even better for the country. It should have been done by other people. It should have been done by Bush. It should have been done by Clinton. Double Bush. It should have been done. I'm doing it.
Trump often touts the strong U.S. economy on the campaign trail, as he did recently in the state of New Hampshire.
Even though we had fake witch hunts on our back and all the other things that we had to go through, we have taken this big, beautiful ship, and it's being turned around very quickly.
But the trade war with China is taking a toll, and some economists now warn of a recession next year that could possibly cripple Trump's re-election chances. Trump's Democratic rivals are targeting his handling of the economy, including current frontrunner Joe Biden.
It goes less to the underpinning of the economy than do a trade policy, a foreign policy, and a domestic policy that has people wondering in the markets how stable this administration is.
Trump also has a new challenger from within his own party, conservative talk show host and former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh.
I'm running because he's unfit. Somebody needs to step up, and there needs to be an alternative. The country is sick of this guy's tantrum. He's a child.
Walsh may turn out to be nothing more than an irritant given Trump's overwhelming support from Republicans. But an economic downturn next year could spell political trouble for the president, says Susan Page.
In modern times, we have never expelled a president, never defeated for re-election a president who is presiding over a time of robust recovery, the kind of recovery the United States is in at this moment. But we also have never re-elected a president who is running for re-election at a time we're in a recession. So that is something the White House is quite aware of.
Trump generally gets high marks on the economy from voters, but a recent Associated Press poll found growing concerns about the president's character, says Steve Peoples.
There were some bright spots on the economy, some policies, but that overall concerns about this president's character, the way he communicates, the way he tends to be divisive on some issues, really outweighs any benefit or that they're seeing from the economy.
And we are making America great again. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you.
For the moment, Trump appears to believe that firing up his political base remains his best hope of winning re-election next year. Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time for our technology segment, and joining us now is Africa 54 Tech reporter Paul Dio. Take it away, Paul.
Thanks, Vincent. The penetration of mobile wallet services in East Africa has evolved from just a simple send and receive service to a fully digital cashless platform. Users now pay for goods and services without money exchanging hands. Ruth Namatovo in Uganda takes a look at how this technology is competing with traditional banks in Kampala.
When you walk around Kampala shops these days, you find many signs of digital payment platforms displayed in many businesses, both large and small. These cashless formats have been deemed safe, reduce vulnerability to insecurities of being robbed, and improved economic cash flows. Thanks to plans by Bank of Uganda to reduce the use of paper notes and checks in the country by the year 2022, the MTN Group, Africa's largest network operator, has evolved its mobile wallet platforms from just paying for utility services to paying for goods in the shops and online via the MomoPay platform, making it Uganda's largest digital payment platform.
There was an outcry of people wanting to go the cashless way, but they didn't have any other way of doing it. I had to first withdraw the money before I make a payment. So MTN MomoPay came to create that convenience for both the customers and the business owners in a cashless format.
Since the introduction of the MomoPay service in November 2017, MTN Uganda, with over 11 million subscribers, has already registered over 80,000 businesses, offering customers a variety of payment options to choose from while shopping.
One is using a USSD, that is a short string of *165 *3 hash. Enter the merchant code of the car, the merchant of the place, enter amount of money, enter the PIN, and money will be moved from your account to the business account. Then the other format is the latest QR code system. I walk to a shop, I can scan and pay. Then the third one is where we have integrated into the business owners' sales platforms, and it's instantly I receive a notification on my phone, and also the business owner receives a notification.
These cashless digital platforms allow users to shop at florist stands, supermarkets, even at restaurants and other places without money changing hands.
I don't have change issues where I'm giving cash, and when I'm balancing, it's easier.
I've used it for the first time here at ShopRite. It's much faster. I also use it when I'm going for my movies, to borrow my films, to even pay for fuel. So it has helped me quite a lot. It's very, very convenient, so I really appreciate it.
A cashless society in East Africa or anywhere else in the world offers real benefits to the economy that can be felt both by the state and its citizens.
In Uganda here, mobile money has contributed to the increase of financial inclusion from 20% in 2001 to 80% now.
But these mobile money technologies also face new competition from traditional banks that have developed their own banking apps that offer digital transactions over the phone. There are also other deficiencies in the cashless formats that need addressing by both users and regulators.
We should worry about how the government can control inflation in the presence of mobile money, since not every mobile money account is linked to a bank account.
Nevertheless, analysts believe that promoting a cashless society is the way to go. With reporter Ruth Namatovu, I am Safra Bahumura for the Voice of America, Kampala, Uganda.
That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks, Paul. I mean, that kind of a story is telling us something here. The African youth especially are engineering this leapfrogging into the future. What do you say?
My friend, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. We just have to leapfrog to the future.
Yes. And as you've seen with M-Pesa in Kenya, now this is kind of growing throughout the continent, is that Africans have discovered how to go around the obstacles they have, like lack of banking in some of the places. Using the mobile phone, you have everything now.
Absolutely. To be honest with you, this technology that we are looking at would not be possible if it wasn't for M-Pesa. I think M-Pesa has opened up the market for almost every single person out there who knows how to use technology. And even to look at it broadly, you see a lot of people now, companies, there's what they call fintech, they're investing more into this kind of technology because that's the future.
Yes. So apparently, you know, Africans are no longer left behind when it comes to development in terms of the technology. We are at par with the rest of the world.
In terms of mobile technology, you're absolutely right, because mobile technology has been in Africa for at least over 25 years, and they have been improving over and over again.
Very impressive. Thank you very much, Paul, for another fabulous tech segment. Well, and that's, just be sure to join Paul and Dio each Wednesday for another segment of technology here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.